I believe sales is life. You can't get better at sales and not see it improve every other area of your life. I think questions are everything in sales. And I think early in my career, I thought it was, okay, I get them to trust me because we find some common ground. Then they'll like me. Then I just tell them how great my product is and they'll buy if I have a good closing line.
I'm integrity and trust. Those are two words that mean very much to me. In fact, trust is tattooed on my left arm. And integrity to me is everything as it relates to alignment and congruence in the ways that I view it. My understanding is you're meeting with me for one of two reasons. Either you've got something broken that you need fixed, or I'm bringing an idea to you that maybe you haven't seen before.
You can build immense trust from two things. One, showing you understand them better than anyone else does. And two, you can...
Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here. We have real, raw conversations with some of the most impactful and influential people on this planet. And some of them you may not even know, and others are known as the everyday sales leader. So it's somebody that you can reach and access at any given time. I had the privilege of interviewing our guest on my other show not long ago, and there was just an instant heart, humility, and accessibility to this individual. So the fact that he's known as the everyday sales leader, but he's also a very dynamic coach, but he's a father, he's a husband, he's traveled, he's done a variety of things. And so he brings this eclectic element of his life and he brings it with heart and passion into everything he does. He's got a podcast, does a bunch of cool work. He's an Arizona native originally. And I just love when you see all these little synchronicities that come into play. And so Drew Norton, I'm super excited to have you here with us today, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that beautiful introduction. And excited to be here. Yeah, get to know you better.
Well, dude, I really enjoyed our 15 minutes of fire together on the show. You just brought it, and you not only were there from a speed standpoint, but your depth was there in every single answer. And I just felt a really deep level of alignment with you. You will probably expect this because it's the only question I ask each guest on each show after I do the intro, which is, who are you in your words?
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this last time. I'm the everyday sales leader, but on a deeper level, I'm integrity and trust. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a giver. I'm someone who loves to connect and work with others. And I'm someone who loves seeing others succeed. When others win, I win. And that's who I am. Short version. I can give you a 5-minute version too.
Well, we've got a full hour to unpack that question even further. So it'll be great. One of the things that you just said, though, which I find extremely compelling, and I would suggest that to literally be the everyday sales leader, you have to operate from a place that when everyone else wins, you're winning, right? When you think of a sales leader, it's not just a person who either gives direction and manages people. It's not just the person that writes the most business. It's the person that literally leads sales in any capacity, whether it's intellectually with people, with humans in every day. And so that accessibility and that desire to help others is huge. We're going to unpack that a little bit further, but two things you said right after you said, I'm the everyday sales leader, but I'm deeper than that. I'm integrity and trust. Those are two words that mean very much to me. In fact, trust is tattooed on my left arm, and integrity to me is everything as it relates to alignment and congruence in the ways that I view it. How do you define integrity and trust, and why are those two words the ones that you led with in introducing who you are?
Yeah, great question. To answer the first part, what do I believe integrity is? I believe, simply, it's doing what you say you'll do. And I'll be the first to say there's times where I live into that fully, and there's times where I don't, and I've got to clean it up.
So cool.
And so it's something I'm committed to being.
Yeah.
And I think trust is just that second element. I am someone, when I say I'll do something, you can count on me to do that. And there's times, once again, where sometimes I'm not always that. And if not, I've found that if I remind myself who I am frequently and say who I am, it helps me live into that more. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it, and I'm committed to being that.
Well, and here's the reality. And it fits exactly the description of how I even talked about you. You're humble, you're accessible, and you even just were like, yep, no, these are important to me, but yeah, I fail at them. It's still kind of a barometer and something that I focus on. Now that you defined them, I'm going to actually ask you to go deeper on this though. Why are those two traits, those words, those concepts, those ways of being and living, why are they so important to you?
Yeah, probably two things come to mind as you ask that. One is just seeing that in my own life from my own parents, especially my father. Like I could say that was him. And also going into sales and that being the career I've chosen and the path I've gone down, that isn't always what people's experience is in sales. And so the only thing I remember my dad ever saying about me going into sales is just be honest. And that was as important. I think that I've come from a big family. There's 7 kids. I'm the oldest, and a few of us have gone into sales. Some have stayed in it, some just for a brief time. And I think that was just important to him is, hey, if you guys are going to this often I got started because of door to door in college in that space. And often kids are promised to make all this money to go do that. And there's a fear that, hey, are they going to, I think my dad was afraid I'd sell my soul in exchange to make a quick buck. And so that's always been important to me. And I've always wanted to, from a sales side, have that relationship with those that I work with. And then just personally in my life, I want people to feel that. Yeah.
And we're going to unpack some sales concepts and belief systems here in just a few. But what you also just said is really something that I think a lot of people don't associate it with sales, which is honesty. Mm-hmm. And I think honesty breed and foster both integrity and trust. And so, if you can be transparent, real, and honest in all those moments, those seem to be byproducts of just operating with that choice on the front end. The other piece that I want to just explore, and I hadn't even thought about this from our last session, and it only popped up in the way that I heard you give that last answer. I do know, because you shared it with me and you shared it on our forum, that you are a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that you also went on a mission. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes missions, and I'm going to speak from limited knowledge with lots of people that I know that are a part of that church, but myself not identifying as one. So I want to be very clear in my understanding. But a lot of missions are really about outreach. It's about getting to people. It's oftentimes even including door to door to introduce yourself and introduce the faith and belief to people who may not know about it. What was your mission experience, and how did it relate to your door-to-door ability in sales that followed later in college?
Yeah, great question. I don't think sales would have even been something I would have ever explored if I hadn't had that experience as a missionary. So yeah, I don't think anyone's even asked me that before. So that's interesting. I consider myself an introvert, which also might seem weird. How can you be an introvert and be in sales? And I found that there's a lot like me.
I am too. I didn't think I was for a lot of years, but I actually am. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm the type that, like, probably my favorite job I ever had was driving a water truck, where I was by myself 8 hours a day, just alone. Right. And that's not going to create everything I want in my life, and why I'm not still driving a water truck. And I really loved that. And so, yeah, back to your question though, about the mission. It gave me a chance to, one, break out of my shell. Like, I had to talk to people day after day after day, which, I'm still naturally, I feel like I'm naturally a shy person. If I'm in a crowd of people, I'm not going to go and talk to everybody in the crowd. And at the same time, I started recognizing some beliefs and had a lot of success as a missionary and bringing people, to conversion to our church. And I thought a lot of that came through my mindset through the work I did. And so when I first was presented a sales job, I was like, oh, like, I can do this. Like, I had people yelling at me for 2 years about religion. This doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I think, what opened my mind to doing it, was having that prior experience. And, I don't think anyone has been, not to say there's never been some uncomfortable situations in sales or business, but I don't know if I've ever had anyone as rude or mean to me as I was when I was talking about religion than about a product or service. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate, one, that you even said that nobody had ever asked you that, but that you also played with it and gave me a really tangible and real answer. It really did shape you in a lot of ways. And I would suggest that, to your point, anybody knocking on your door to want to talk about religion or politics is usually like Fort Knox thick armor.
Yeah.
I mean, and let's just call it in the world that we're in today, right? No right or wrong. Those are very polarizing topics that people are very strong in their camp, And yet your singular job is to go out and try to open somebody to a different way of believing or existing that's in alignment with you. And so in one way, you're selling something that's easy to sell because you believe in it. You're aligned in it. You're committing 2 years of your mission and your life to this belief that you're selling, for lack of a better term, right?
Totally.
Like, just call it what it is. You're opening people's opportunities to it. You also said that you found success in that way, but you also never had more rejection than in any other role.
Yeah.
And so that's what I find really powerful is in sales, more often than not, it's the lack of energetic and emotional alignment and belief that people have in the service or product that often prevents them from even being able to do it successfully. And yet you had training grounds in something that you totally believe in and align in. And yet had you gone out to sell water bottles in your first job and you got all these doors slammed in you, you might not still be doing it.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the piece I'd like you to sit with for just a second is if you look at that mission trip and how it conditioned you, what was the contrast between that and your first 1 or 2 actual sales jobs? And how were you able to, I guess, center yourself in the perspective between what you'd already been through and where you wanted to go?
Yeah, great question. I think just part of it's just the why behind it always. And so for that was you're right on. It was the belief in my faith and those things being an important part of my life. And then I think it was just getting started in sales. It was a hunger. It was a desire. It was, I went from I remember I think my first sale I ever made was, and this is in college where I'm making, I don't know, $12-15 an hour back then. Maybe, and that was good at the time. Now it's minimum wage, but I think I made like $150 my first sale. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like my world just I'd always been a hard worker and I found like, hey, I could work twice as hard as somebody else. And maybe if I'm lucky, I get a 25-cent raise. And then, so like this kind of opened up my mind to like, oh, wow, I can get paid for what I'm actually worth. And so that was really exciting. The first thing I sold was actually satellite TV door to door.
I love it.
I wouldn't, now it's like, I'm 36, but that starts making me feel old to say I sold that. I don't know how many
I'm 40, bro. I totally get it. It's okay.
And so was I super passionate about that? I don't know. A lot of times you're saving people money and it was a great experience and good at the time, a good product. To sell. Did I believe in it the most in the world? Probably not. And I was hungry though. I was like, I had just gotten married. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do in the world. There's a little bit of a competition side to it. So I'm working with other guys my age and trying to keep up with others. And so I think that's what kind of drove me early on. Then I sold pest control next. A lot of young guys do that door to door. And could I say I was super passionate about pest control? Probably not. Like back then I was like, I don't think I'd ever pay for this. I'd spray my own house. Now I pay for pest control, but I just had a desire to grow and to learn and to get better. And I think that's what pushed me, even if the product wasn't what I thought the most amazing thing in the world. I believed in the company I was working at. I believed in their service. I didn't think they were bad. Because I've also had some short stints at places where I'm like, oh, I don't trust this. I don't believe this. And I didn't stay there long because of that. Yeah. So,
which I think says a
question.
I think it answered it as perfectly as it needed to be answered by you. Yeah. I don't see it as a right or a wrong. I think that was the perspective that I was looking for is you found yourself in positions, though you didn't have as much resistance. You wouldn't align with something that you didn't believe in. You aligned with companies and organizations that you at least had an alignment and belief in. And then it was your focus on what was beyond it that allowed you to stay present and grow and get the reps. I think that gave a lot of perspective because again, you went from selling the thing you're probably most passionate about, right? To now I'm selling pest control and I don't even think I need pest control. Why would if I don't buy this, why would somebody else buy this? Right? Like there's some nuance to all of that. That's really interesting, but sales has always been your path, right? And it was somewhat conditioned and you kind of fell into, and you jumped around and had some different pieces. When did you fully embrace your knack for sales? And I'm going to specifically say as a hunter.
I would say probably 5 or 6 years ago, I started to embrace that. And up until that point, I kind of always thought, well, I just work really hard. I'm not great at sales. I'm just a hard worker. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we talked about this or not on the Instagram live, but I used to do everything I could to say I wasn't in sales. Like you
avoided it.
Yeah, I avoided it. I was afraid of how I would be perceived because I was in sales. I think the classic examples, the used car salesman, I didn't want people to view me that way. And I feel bad for that industry. I love my used car salesman. I have a guy I usually go and buy all my used cars from. And I get why there's the stigma around it. And so 5 or 6 years ago, I changed industries, changed jobs. And there came a point where I just said, you know what? Like I love real estate. I'm a real estate investor. I do that more passively. I have some real estate I'm invested in. And I was kind of doing both and just kind of had this decision of like, I wonder how I'd do if I went all in. Like, I wonder how I'd do if I just like treated this like this was the only thing and just put all my focus into sales. And when I did that, like I had my best year I ever had. I led my company. We had over 100 sales reps and I led the company that year. The next couple of years, I had the biggest teams. And I just started to realize, oh, like maybe it's not me just working hard. Maybe like I actually have some talents and abilities that I've shied away from, or I haven't wanted to admit I'm good at sales. Like,
yeah.
So some things I had to work through, I think.
Well, and and we're going to get to some components of that, I'm sure, through our discussion. But you and I both, I think, had success in some ways earlier in life because we were good at sales. But what I also know, at least for myself, and I sense the same about you, I also didn't ever fit in any sales textbook or training program. And I often was told all the reasons why what I was doing wasn't going to work. But with enough time, I was consistently always at the top of any rankings with less effort. I don't say that with ego or to brag. It took me a long time to realize and admit and believe fully that my gut, my trust, what I was following was different, but it was impactful. And you, despite the feedback from your dad saying, just be honest, right? We're in a variety of different industries that are churn and burn, high volume, high burnout rate, high failure rate. And the reason a lot of those roles fit used car salesman type things as door-to-door salespeople is because a lot of them come across that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's scripted, it's done, it's follow this process. Now, something tells me that you broke all the molds. So help me understand, even though you didn't identify as being a good salesperson, how early in your sales journey did you realize how different your approach was?
Yeah, I think the first time I maybe had a hint that, oh, maybe there is something different or about that is I ended up doing insurance for several years, but in between, before I got licensed as an insurance agent, I was kind of working part-time doing that in between summers during my school years. And I just remember my boss kind of calling me back and he's like, man, you're really good at this. You get into great conversations with people. It's very natural. It's very flows very organically. And he kind of offered me, hey, when you get done selling this next summer, come and run my branch for me. And I was kind of like blown away, like, oh, I didn't think that was an opportunity or would be possible. So I think I started to recognize then like, oh, hey, like, I'm doing this and I'm selling to people in a way that feels natural, that feels authentic, that feels like we're building a relationship, and at the same time helping them make decisions and move forward. And I used to like say, oh, well, I'm not selling, and now I've come to say, well, no, that's what selling really is. Selling is helping people discover that where they are doesn't work, and they need to make a change in their life, and they need to move forward with something new or something different.
Well, and traditionally, I believe that if you operate in, to your point, authentic and real, you are honest and you're focused on really what's best for the other person versus just pushing a product or a solution, then really sales is a value add. It's truly helping people understand and see things that they maybe have not otherwise. And yet many people struggle with the concept of sales because of all the reasons that you just said. Yeah. I didn't want to bother people. I didn't want to be associated with this. I didn't want to have this fear. And those are all shame elements that are conditioned by telling us all the reasons why we are or are not good enough and what we should or shouldn't be. And you even said, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. There's always stuff there, but you started to have some success early. And so that's, I think, what I'd like to better understand. You were asked to go run a branch. You're now considered the everyday sales leader. You've successfully run teams. You've successfully run companies. You've helped implement this for other people to step into truly being able to create solutions or getting them out of the place that they no longer need to be in whatever sales process it approaches. If you had to describe your approach to sales, whether it's a system, a structure, a breakdown, however you want to describe it, how would you describe the concept of selling that you teach? And how does it apply to any business, whether it's a product or a service?
Yeah, the way I teach it, and look, as far as sales trainings go, I think you go to most sales training, there's elements that cross over in every
I agree.
industry.
There's universal truths to all of it. I agree.
I've been influenced by others. I like to call the way I teach sales Inception. I love that movie Inception. I love the idea of like planting ideas in people's minds where they believe it's their decision.
Yes.
And that it can be done ethically at the same time. And so to me, like selling is helping people discover that there's an urgent need for a solution. And it's way more powerful in my experience when you ask great questions, when you listen, when you repeat things back, and then they come to the conclusion rather than you just stating it to them. I found if I can tell people all the benefits of something all day long till I'm blue in the face, but when they kind of have an aha moment where they say out loud, like, oh, if I don't do this, here's the consequence. Or if I do this, this is going to get me, this is going to get me this thing I've been yearning for in my life or my business or my home. That's way more powerful than any closing line you can use or any product description that you can have. It's like helping people do that.
And if I summarize even what I just heard you say, you focus less on the features and benefits and you focus more on the human and extracting from them the knowledge you need to determine whether or not your product or solution actually gives them value.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the anxiety in sales is that we have to make a sale. And if you can show up and, hey, I'm here to serve, I'm here to help. One, I've got to find out if this is even a good fit for you first. And, a lot of times if your marketing's good or you're reaching out to the right people, you often know it probably is. Yeah. And if there's no pressure on your end, whether or not to make the sale and you just show up free, and then you can help somebody feel that same thing. Hey, like we're here to figure out if this is a good fit for you.
Yeah.
It relieves that pressure. And then and until there's I don't think you have an obligation to sell something to someone until you know this is what they need.
Correct. And what you're saying as well,
figure it out.
You're saying that when you get into a sales conversation, it's information gathering, right? And determining whether or not there's actually something here, which I agree with completely. Now, I'm going to unpack a component of that in a second, but you just said something that made me want to focus here. You said when you don't feel the need to have to deliver in that sale, right? You can alleviate the pressure of the sale. And I believe that there's two ways to this. One, both systematically how you set up systems and expectations and reward and failure and celebration in a culture of sales, right? There is a way that you can do this that alleviates the pressure. But more often than not, regardless of that pressure, I find that most really good salespeople are actually driven by shame and performance. And so the pressure is mostly self-imposed, coming from scarcity tied to, I have to get this sale, even if they've got potentially a full pipeline. So abundance is one of the factors that I really focus on to alleviate that pressure. And that's both a mindset and an activity thing.
Yeah.
In the ways that I go about teaching it. How do you teach people to relieve that pressure, either within themselves or within the people and sales teams that they're leading?
I really love that word abundance. That's huge. In fact, side note, my real estate partner and our business is Abundant Investments. So I love that. I love that word. It's easier said than done, right? It's easier said to hey, show up free and believe in abundance. And I've also experienced, hey, if I'm going in not worried about things, like we get places so much faster. And I don't know, it's almost hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced that before what that's like. But I remember early on when I first got fully licensed, was full time in that insurance job at church. I met a man who was also an insurance agent, and he owned a local branch that was technically a competitor of ours. And we ended up working together with the young men at our church. And so we worked together a lot. And I remember one of the first comments I made to him was, "Oh, well, I guess we're competitors," or something to that effect. And he just said to me, "Oh, Drew, don't worry about it. There's everybody needs insurance. There's plenty to go around. If you ever need my help, let me know." And like that just blew me away. And he's been a friend and a mentor ever since, despite never having like worked with him. And so I think just hearing that from him early on just impacted me and made me think, oh, wow, like there is enough to go around. Like, and chances are whatever your product or service is, if you get down to who can I actually help, there's thousands or if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that fit your niche or your category. And so I think when you start viewing it that way, if you can show up free, it's like once you do that, and once again, it's hard to just put into words a little bit, but I feel like when you don't care about the results and you focus on the inputs, like it seems like the outputs just come.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We teach this deep concept that the second that you protect yourself, you actually guarantee you're going to disconnect yourself. Right. So if you're operating from scarcity or shame or fear, and this is in every relationship and every communication, but it's in sales too, right? Oh yeah. It's like when I was 22 and I walked in and the CFO said, "Brian, why are you and your company the best to work with?" And I didn't have a good answer other than all the shit I knew. And so I vomited all over his desk without asking a single question. Right. It's like, that didn't win the deal. It didn't create connection. It didn't facilitate trust. It just was dumping. Right. One of the ways though, and you said this very clearly as well, that I want to spend some time with, because I teach this concept that I call the upfront agreement. It's similar, frankly, to even what I did in the beginning part of the show, just totally different in terms of the application. But in sales, it's truly through the lens of just saying, look, I've got zero expectations for where this will go. My understanding is you're meeting with me for one of two reasons. Either you've got something broken that you need fixed, or I'm bringing an idea to you that maybe you haven't seen before. Either way, the only way to determine us if that is true is if we can have an open, honest discussion, regardless of the outcome. And so if you can be open to a grand inquisition for me to legitimately ask you a lot of questions today, then if there's a place I can help you, I'll tell you. And if there's not, that's okay. But can we agree to that up front before we even begin? Because if you come into this thing thinking I'm going to try to sell you at the back end of this, I'm never going to get the information I need.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's so in line with
how I believe it is.
How I start. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to, I call it the upfront agreement, and I teach it through a different way and a different setup. But how do you help teach salespeople to create an emotionally safe space so that their potential buyer is even open to what could happen in that conversation?
Yeah. So I think there's two sides to it. One, you have to show up free. So you have to show up to start without, because look, if you're not
your energy
up with commission and breath, like they're going to sense that and feel that. Yep. So it kind of starts with some inner work first, like letting go of some limitations and remove. And so there's the whole psychology or coaching or work that's to be done there for people. And that to me is less on the tactical side and more on yourself. And then I think it's like, okay, what are the things I say when I show up? And a lot of times, you know, we show up to a conversation as a salesperson and we're worried. If we're worried, what's the other person sitting feeling like on the other side when they're talking to you, the salesperson trying to convince them something? Like we got to remember, like I joke all the time that me and my wife, we have an agreement to throw each other under the bus when a salesperson talks to us, or I don't know how many times we've gone in somewhere saying we're not buying anything when we do that. Go in here today. Right. And so I think if you can just help the prospect feel free by, I call it the kick, but framing the conversation, having an initial agreement where it's like, hey, this is what we're going to do today. And then I even love if the intention is that we're going to make a decision, you tell them that, or if the intention is we're going to have another meeting, you tell them that too. So it's not a surprise at the end when you get to that. So if it's like, hey, and if we find out this is a good fit, I'm going to ask you to move forward. Or it might be, hey, if we feel like we could work together, the only thing we'll do today is schedule another meeting. Because I think sometimes the problem too is people go into this sales meeting on the consumer side and they have no idea what to expect. And it's like, you wouldn't get on a tour bus if you didn't know where the bus was going, how long it was going to be, how much, whether or not there was going to be food on there. And so it's like the best thing you can do is tell someone, hey, this is the intentions of the meeting today and where we're going to go and what that's going to look like.
Beautiful. I love that you call it the kick, by the way. There's a whole lot of reasons why I like that term as well. And again, we're talking the same universal truths, just with different language through different experience. And yet, again, very grounded and real in the way that you communicate about it. You alluded to it earlier, but what role do you believe questions play in building integrity and trust and this whole process?
Oh, yeah, so much. I think questions are everything in sales. And I think early in my career, I thought it was, okay, I get them to trust me because we find some common ground. Then they'll like me. Then I just tell them how great my product is and they'll buy if I have a good closing line. I don't believe that's true anymore.
I agree.
And I've experienced, like, one, you can build immense trust from two things. One, showing you understand them better than anyone else does. And two, you can build a ton of trust by asking great questions. In fact, I jumped on a call with someone the other day. He's actually a sales trainer. He's in the real estate space, well known in his space. He reached out to me and I had no idea what we were talking about and looking at maybe some potential JV partnerships and the questions he was asking me, I'm like, I even said to him, like, wow, these are amazing questions. And in my mind, his credibility shot through the roof so fast because just the quality of the things he was asking me and the way he was digging into how I was responding and getting me to open up and say more. And yeah, I think if you want to build trust, show people you understand them and ask great questions.
Yeah. How do you define a great question?
Yeah. Maybe it's easier to find a bad question first.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. And I'll start by saying I think bad questions create resistance. And so what would be a bad question? And I'm not saying this is something I've spent a lot of time studying. I really love one that's someone who's influenced me a lot is Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. I love
great book.
If you haven't read it.
He's an amazing guy. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah. It's fantastic. And he talks about no-oriented questions. And I've found a lot of salespeople start with questions that ask for a yes. And the idea is, like, if you get people to agree with you enough on little things, they'll say yes to a big thing. And there is some science that backs that up. But early on in a conversation, sometimes getting asked a question that ends in yes, it's like, oh, you're trapping me in a corner. You're putting me into a box. And so I love his approach about asking no-oriented questions that allow people to feel safe and feel like they can say no early on. And then I really love questions, what, how, why, that start with those. And then just little things. I mean, this is maybe isn't a question, but saying things like, tell me more, or just repeating back what you're hearing so people can clarify. I found those just get people to open up and start sharing a lot.
I will say, I'm going to add on to your how to define a bad question first. And I can't say this is like unilaterally true, but I would say more often than not it is. I hate close-ended questions.
Yeah.
Right. And to the point that if I ask a close-ended question, whether it's in an environment that I'm trying to add value or create a sale, or even on here, I almost even lead with, I don't know any other way to ask this other than a close-ended question. So please bear with me because I need to ask this so I can open to the next one. Right. Because I hate asking yes or no or like single word answers, because to your point, it's about getting them to talk just like he did with you so that you can read the nuance beyond it. How have you learned to increase the quality of your questions?
Practice is part of it. So like I love reading sales books. I love reading things from other things. When I hear a new idea, I try to implement it. I try to, the next conversation I have, okay, let's try it out and see what happens. And I think sometimes the problem for some people is they try the question once, and if it doesn't work the first time, they give up on it. I think you've got to try a question multiple times to see how different people respond to it. I think one of the things that's kind of been my superpower in sales is my desire to learn and get better. Like, I've always been good at debriefing. It drives me crazy when I walk out of a deal that I feel like I should have helped someone and I didn't. It's like, okay, what could I have said different? How could I have asked that? So back to your question, I think it's practicing questions and then just being intentional with those questions. Like, okay, why am I actually even asking? Sometimes we're just asking questions because we're trying to fill its silence, and that can be very unhelpful too in a conversation. So it's like, okay, what are the things I want to know as the salesperson, or what are the things I want them to maybe think about that they haven't thought about before? And how could I ask that question in a way that would maybe change their mind or have them look at it from a different angle?
Yeah. I love it, brother. Hey, do I have permission to reflect something small back to you? It's like just a nuance in a language piece.
Yes, please.
You had said, whenever I felt like I should be able to help somebody. Should is a shame-based word.
Yep.
It implies whoever you are, whatever you're doing, it's not good enough, right? And so all I would suggest is even in the nuance, and this is for others that are listening and salespeople who are listening, even that language puts you into a shame and blame state versus a growth and opportunity state. It changes your frequency. And so flip-flop that, because there's not a single situation I found that you can't interchange should with the words could or would. What could I have done differently next time? What would I have done differently if I knew what I know now?
Yeah.
Those types of things. So thank you for your openness to that. I know how intentional you are, so it was just a quick little reflection for you. My friend, I love the way you discuss all of these things, but what I also hear through all of this, and rarely do I actually start and spend the most amount of time on the very beginning of the call, it's tactically in the concept of sales and philosophically in the concept of sales as I would otherwise, because I really like for people to get to know you beyond just what you do. It started with the first question, and you hit me with a couple words that struck me there. But you obviously identify as a father and a husband as well. And it's a very, very big focus for you in your life. And you even talked about first getting married. Your sales life and your marriage life are about the same lifeline, right? And so I'd like you to share a little bit about what drives you from the family perspective. And then as you've grown as a salesperson as well as a family man, how have those trajectories complemented each other?
Yeah, great question. I think,
by the way, so pause just for a second. Anytime I hear great question or good question, that tells me I'm in alignment. So thank you.
Nope, it is. Okay. So I think early on, it was like, I want to make money for my family. Like, I want to provide, I want to, and that really drove me, to be honest. Money was a huge driver for me. And, oldest of 7 kids, I didn't grow up without. And, I heard constantly, oh, we can't afford that, or we can't have this. So it's always been like, oh, I don't want to say that. I love Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like that mind shift change of how can I afford it? And so I wanted to provide, and I think that was the driving factor early on. And what I even found is like sales, because it's commission based, because the better you do, the more you can make. I've also found it's really easy for me to spend too much time working, like too much time selling, like overcommitting myself. And in that year, even where I did as well as I did, it brought a lot of stress. It brought, like, when you're managing 2-3 times the projects you ever have because of the success you're having, it brings a whole list of new challenges. Your phone's always ringing. There were mornings where it was like, I'd wake up at 6 until 10 o'clock at night. I'm just dealing with things all day long. And so that's also made me, one, start to value my time more than I used to and be very intentional about my time. And one thing that really struck me, I can't remember which book I read this in or where this came from. It might have been something from Hal Elrod. I'm thinking The Miracle Equation. I don't know if you've ever read that one, but I think it's this book. He talks about priorities, and we often say what our priorities are. We say they're a priority, and then it's like, how much time do you actually spend with that priority? And I remember reading that at a time where I was crushing it in a lot of ways in my sales career, and just like, man, I say my family's my priority, and they never see me. They get what's left. And, and that hurt when I like had that moment of like, man, my family's, they're not getting the best of me. And so then it became like, okay, how can I have both? Like, how can there be some abundance? How can I start creating a life where I can make a good living and have the time. And it's funny because everybody always says they want time and money, but it's like, what do those things actually, like if you, I love asking people, hey, if you could have anything you want, and you can't say time or money, what would those things be? And I think it's like, for a lot of us, it's like, well, I want to live a life where I can do some of the things I've always wanted to do, or I want to be able to be with my family with intention. And so that in some ways that success brought a lot of stress, which also created more transformation for me on what was important to me and what I cared about.
Yeah. I want to pause you where the emotion hit you for just a second. I have assumptions in the way that I read it, but I don't ever like to assume. And I want you to be able to reflect this back. What was the emotion? What was the depth of the emotion, and what was the range of emotion? Because there wasn't just one when you said that. When your tears bubbled in your eyes and you felt that for a moment, there were multiple emotions simultaneously.
Yeah.
So bring us to the moment of realization when you realized that your values and your priorities weren't in alignment, and unpack that emotion that I just saw from you a second ago.
Yeah, we probably don't have enough time to go through all of this.
It's okay.
And a couple things. I think one, especially men and women too, but people our age and maybe younger, like this is your 20s, your 30s, even your 40s are like, it's often, and our culture is almost, there's a side of our culture that's this grind, this hustle, and I was definitely very much caught up in that. And I think what I started to realize is like, man, I miss all my kids' plays. I'm missing the games on the weekends. Like we're having an awesome vacation once a year, or when we do something that's really fun and it's really cool and I am present. And I'm like, it's also not worth grinding for 10 or 20 years and missing everything also. And there's a lot in all of that. And I remember my wife also saying to me, because at one point in this shift, I was working out of town because I won't go into all the details, but I was working out of town, running a team 2 hours away, back and forth. And that got better over time. But the first year or two, I remember my wife, and she didn't say this to like put me down as a husband, but I had the shame and guilt of, she'd make jokes about I'm a single parent sometimes. It's like, ooh, like, I don't want you to feel that way. Like I'm not doing my job if you're saying that. So,
well, and I identify deeply with everything you just shared as well. Often when people ask me who I am today, I often start by even saying I'm a husband and father first. And I've said that for 20 years, but my words, actions, and behaviors were not always congruent. Mm-hmm. Right. And I was unaware that they weren't congruent, but the reality of it did hit me at a point that was clear enough that I chose to make a difference and make a change. What was the internal dialogue when you realized that the outside world was reflecting back to you a version of yourself that didn't align with your intent?
It was a couple of years of soul searching, honestly. Like it didn't come overnight. I mean, some of it came through hiring a coach, like for myself, doing that now. I do that too. And I've always found the benefit of a coach is they can sometimes help you see things you can't see yourself because you're in the middle of it. Like I like the phrase, you can't see the label sometimes from inside the bottle. Mm-hmm. But honestly, it was a couple of years of like work of asking, who am I? What is important to me? What are my priorities? How can I get the things I want in life and at the same time, make family a priority? And I think I'm still figuring some of that out. And yeah, it took a lot of time and work and reflection and to unpack and kind of, and even I love your question at the beginning, like, who are you? Like, if you'd asked me that a couple of years, I'd say, well, I'm Drew Norton. I almost wouldn't understand, like, what does it mean? Who are you? Like I'm my name, right? And they're like, who you are and your name are two different things. And so I'm going to start rambling.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You're right on point. What does freedom mean to you?
I think the short answer is like doing what you want when you want. And I also feel like that's just the surface, the surface level to it. I really think freedom is living without shame, without guilt, without anxiety, without a focus on the past or a anxiousness about the future. It's really, really being present. And that's something I've pursued a lot the last year or two, that if I can be present, I feel free.
Yeah. I think presence is everything. And it can be really challenging to get into in a variety of ways. You now are known as the Everyday Sales Leader, and you lead a podcast that's focused on this. You help, you train, you focus on cultivating individual and organizational success. You are always finding ways to shorten the curve for other people. Tell us a little bit about where you're at currently, right? Like what does your day-to-day look like? What are the businesses that you're building? And how does the Everyday Sales Leader show up in those businesses for other people and for your family?
Yeah, I if you asked me even a year ago where I'd be or what it looked like, I wouldn't have thought what it is right now. I only started coaching and consulting about a year and a half ago, and I joined a consulting agency as a coach. Came in to do sales, loved the people, and they made a pivot, and their goals and mine just weren't. That wasn't in alignment. A lot of the beliefs were. So I actually went independent probably about 8 months ago, launched the podcast. The podcast is the Everyday Leader. It's more focused on leadership necessary than sales. And so what I'm doing currently is I do some private coaching and then business coaching, / consulting. And it's mostly focused around either leadership or sales. Sales is my track record. That's my credibility, so to speak. And building big teams, I spend a lot of time in leadership roles, and I love helping people grow in their leadership. And I really believe when it comes to business, any business that's stuck or not growing, it's likely one of two things. At least I believe you can categorize everything into, and it's either the leadership or it's the systems and processes. And so it's like, if you can grow as a leader or grow leaders in your organization, that solves a ton of problems. Or if you can fix the systems and processes where things are stuck, those two things combined, I think, will allow businesses to scale, to grow, to succeed.
Yeah. So is this your first entrepreneurial venture?
Yes and no.
By the way, I asked you a closed-ended question. I didn't mean to. There you go.
Right. How could we make that question better, Brian? No, I have a real estate business on the side, but that's always been, that it has always been more passive. Even as a sales rep and sales leader, I was technically always 1099. So it was kind of like being a realtor for a real estate company almost, where I had a lot of freedom and control, but it is different now because I'm operating more as a business than as just an individual.
Yeah.
Currently. So,
and I'm going to ask for permission to give a little bit of a reflection as well on something that I just find interesting, but it's said with love and grace, and please take it for what it is. It sounds to me like this is the first time you've ever had to sell yourself. Yeah. And the second I asked you to talk about it, your whole energy changed.
Yep.
and so I highlight this only because what I'm trying to suggest to everybody is, yes, you know how to sell things that you believe in, products, systems, services, you know how to build teams. But yet one of the biggest failure points for most new businesses and entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneur is themselves the product, is actually stepping into and selling themselves versus something that they believe in beyond them. How has that transition been for you? That
has been the most difficult part, hands down. And I've seen that's the most difficult part for a lot of businesses. In fact, one of my coaching clients this morning, we were talking about how do you sell yourself to people, because he's an electrical contractor. He went from being an electrician to now I'm running the business. Now I'm selling me. Yep. It's not just the electrical work I do. Like, they're buying me.
Yeah.
And so, I am working on that constantly. And look, a couple years ago, if I'd known I was going to be doing this, I'd have been like, there's no way I would get into this. There's no way I would want to step out more on social media or be on podcasts. And you're accurate in what you caught. And the work that I've been doing is I've also come to recognize, and maybe this would be helpful for anyone that feels some of those same things, is, if you've got something you believe can help others, you do have a moral obligation to step up and to share and to do that. And there's nothing wrong, despite me having maybe some internal work still to continue to do. There's nothing wrong. You can be humble and you can be confident.
Correct.
And I think part of, back to my early childhood, was my dad is the epitome of humility in my mind. And so that has made it challenging for me to.
Well, because you don't want to promote yourself in a way that comes across as egoic. And this is why many people struggle with this idea of imposter syndrome. But here's the kicker. Imposters don't get imposter syndrome. Only sociopaths do. Right. And so that's the other side of it is that nothing has changed except that everything has changed. Right. Your ability to know how to ask the questions, guide and lead. And even on our mastermind call this morning, that was one of the core conversations I was having with somebody is like, how much do you believe that you can help your core avatar? And we broke it down with specifics. I'm keeping it vague for his purpose, but literally he's like, oh my God, I know I can crush it. And it's like, well, then you're doing them a disservice by not going out and helping them. And if you really care about the impact, right. But yet when you've got to promote yourself and then negotiate and step into the value that, right. It's like, well, am I really worth that much? Am I not worth that much? Like, and I want to say thank you for being willing to let me reflect that and lean right into it. Because by the way, it's that level of honesty that makes you accessible as a salesperson. Because here's the other way that I think you could eliminate any and all friction in this process. That's a part of your upfront agreement. That's a part of your kick. I've been a sales leader, scaled multiple sales teams, and I've been doing this since I was 18 years old and started on my mission trip. I can't tell you how many things and people and situations I've sold. But yet in all of that experience, I've never had to sell myself until I started this business. Yeah. So if you pick up on any hesitation from me, it's not my lack of belief on what I can deliver. It's a new muscle that I'm learning for myself in actually positioning the value that I know I have to add. And then all you're doing is clarifying everything up front. And they're like, oh, cool. He's a human just like the rest of us. And he's not trying to sell me anything. He's not posturing. He's like, oh shit. So take that for what it is.
Well, I love that because you can speak to your credibility and you can still be authentic.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
And that's okay.
Yep. It's 100% okay because you've got nothing to apologize for. And so I love that you went there and I'm grateful that you allowed us to even play on that because guess what? As an everyday sales leader who's written and produced and sold shitloads of revenue in multiple businesses, led and scaled teams, yet you still have human moments and you are very humble in the fact that you're still on this journey and on this process and you're still learning to ask better questions of yourself and of others. That's what it comes down to, Drew. And I appreciate your humility, your integrity, and the trust that you fostered with us today. So as we start to wrap towards the tail end of this conversation, where are the best places for people to find you, follow you? I know that you've got some free resources. Everything will be in the show notes, but wrap that together with maybe a closing thought and then we'll be on our way, my friend.
Easiest way to find me, I'm on most social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, The Everyday Sales Leader, also on YouTube. So if you search for me, that's probably the easiest way to find me. I've got a resource for your listener. So this resource, a questionnaire to help you kind of figure out your sales archetypes. Sometimes the problem we have is we don't want to view ourselves as a salesperson. So it's like, okay, how can I view myself as something powerful? And ask some questions to help you kind of lean into one of those. So if you text sales to 928-928-5985, you can get access to that resource, just a PDF one pager with some questions and then gives you, okay, based on what you answer, here's maybe where your natural strengths in sales might be. And honestly, I feel like it's more about just the reframing your mindset about how you view yourself than it is, okay, which am I the servant leader or am I the challenger? Like it's more about just sometimes reframing that. So yeah, best place to find me though, The Everyday Sales Leader. And, what was the last question? Just a final thought.
If there was a closing thought that you wanted to leave everybody with.
Yeah. I believe sales is life. You can't get better at sales and not see it improve every other area of your life. And I've just experienced that over and over again. And that's why I do the work that I do is I love to help others get more confident in their ability to stand out as a leader and to sell. And I'm constantly working on doing that for myself too. So
Drew, I appreciate you being with us today. I love all the heart, everything that you're working on. We need more people who are leading in sales like you are, which is really about the person on the other side rather than whatever they're positioning. And so I'm just super grateful for how you show up in the world.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Brian. This was an awesome interview and good being with you today.
Awesome, my friend. And for those of you that just saw Drew flip open his lid and jump in, sales is life. And I'm going to start by saying my greatest sales job is still my wife. Because here's the truth. Every morning I wake up and she's still in bed next to me. I consider it a victory out of the gate because I've started off one more day. But he had early situations and belief that rooted him in honesty, integrity, and trust. He had a missions trip that allowed him to recognize that he could sell something he truly believed in, regardless of the rejection, the hate, and all of the interactions that came through that. But then with the focus on providing for his family, he also dedicated himself to perfecting his craft and is still perfecting his craft. At the end of the day, as an everyday sales leader, it's about leading from a position of truth and honesty. And at the very end, Drew brought it all to reality by saying that, yep, the hardest thing to sell is selling yourself. And he's doing that for the first time ever. Yet he's doing it with honesty, integrity, and trust, which is going to continue to open doors and continue to allow the freedom that he desires in his life, because he's learning to do it without shame and without blame. And you can too. It's just going to require you to flip open your lid and scan your can. We'll see y'all next time.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.